I really wanted to leave something sacred behind for these. And he was so beautiful.
Yeah.
For decades, Stevie Nicks has been the mystical queen of rock, a woman wrapped in shawls, mystery, and magic. Her lyrics about love, heartbreak, and dreams have inspired millions. Yet one thing she has always kept hidden is the truth about her own romantic fascinations within the world of rock and roll. Now, at 77, Stevie is finally opening up like never before. In a recent sit-down interview, the Fleetwood Mac icon reflected on her life, her loves, and the men in music who captivated her imagination, not with scandal, but with admiration, charm, and artistry. For a woman who's shared the stage with legends, Stevie's confessions are both surprising and deeply human. She spoke with humor, honesty, and just a touch of nostalgia as she named 6 male artists she admitted having the biggest crushes on. Some her contemporaries, others younger stars who reminded her of the golden days of music. "I've lived a wild, beautiful life," she laughed, "and I can finally say who made my heart skip a beat." From a soulful legend whose voice she once called dangerously beautiful, to a rebellious frontman who reminded her of her younger self, Stevie's list paints a portrait of a woman who, despite the fame and heartbreak, never lost her sense of wonder. These aren't confessions of scandal. They're the when Stevie Nicks began talking about her first great rock and roll crush. Her eyes softened with that familiar, faraway look, the one fans have seen on stage 1,000 times. The name she mentioned first wasn't a shock to those who know her history. Don Henley, the Eagles frontman and one of the most talented songwriters of his generation. Their connection dates back to the mid-1970s, when Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles were both at the height of their fame. "We were living in the same musical universe," Stevie recalled. "The same hotels, the same studios, the same long nights of writing songs about love and loss." What started as professional admiration soon turned into something deeper. Stevie described Henley as the rebel with a golden heart, a man whose quiet confidence drew her in. "He wasn't loud or arrogant," she said. "He just had this presence. You could feel his energy before he even walked into the room." Both artists were at creative peaks, pouring emotion into songs that defined an era. For Stevie, Don represented everything she admired in a musician: intelligence, mystery, and vulnerability hidden behind a tough exterior. "He understood heartbreak," she said softly. "When he sang, you believed every word." Their friendship blossomed into collaboration, most famously with the haunting duet Leather and Lace. Released in 1981, the song was personal, intimate, and emotional, almost too honest. "That song was like a conversation between us," Stevie explained. "Two people trying to understand each other, but knowing they never fully could." While many speculated that there was more than friendship between the two, Stevie's reflections now are more tender than romantic. "It wasn't about being together," she said. "It was about connection. Don and I had this unspoken understanding. We were both chasing the same dream and the same ghosts. Even after years apart, their bond remained." Don once described Stevie as the most poetic spirit in rock, and she returned the sentiment by calling him a man who could break your heart just by singing one line. Yet behind the admiration, there was also sadness. Both artists lived through the chaos of fame, the long tours, the endless pressure, and the personal sacrifices. "There were times when we could have been something," Stevie admitted, "but timing was never on our side. Still, her respect for him never faded." When asked in her recent interview what she would say to Don Henley today, Stevie smiled wistfully. "I'd thank him for the music, for the memories, and for showing me that strength and sensitivity can live in the same soul." In her eyes, Don Henley remains one of the few men who truly understood her, not as a rock star, but as a woman navigating fame and vulnerability. "We were both dreamers," she said, "and that's probably why I'll always have a soft spot for him." To this day, whenever she hears Desperado or Hotel California, Stevie says it brings her back to that era. Smoky rooms, piano melodies, and late-night conversations about life, art, and everything in between. "It was a beautiful time," she whispered. "And Don was a beautiful part of it." In naming him first among her 6 biggest crushes, Stevie wasn't confessing lost love. She was honoring a kindred spirit. Because for her, Don Henley wasn't just another musician. He was proof that even in the unpredictable storm of rock and roll, there were moments of genuine connection. And people you never forget. Reflections of a woman who, when Stevie Nicks began to describe the second man who fascinated her, her voice took on a tone of reverence, almost as if she were talking about a mythical figure. That man was Jim Morrison, the charismatic and tortured frontman of the Doors. Long before Fleetwood Mac took over the airwaves, Stevie was just a young woman chasing poetry and purpose in the California music scene. She remembered listening to Morrison's voice for the first time and feeling something shift inside her. It was like hearing a prophet, she said softly. He sang like he'd already seen the end of the world. Stevie never actually met Jim Morrison in person, but his spirit influenced her deeply. "He was the dark poet I never stopped writing letters to in my head," she admitted with a small smile. "Even when I was writing Rhiannon or Dreams, there was a little piece of Jim in the back of my mind. That fearless honesty, that refusal to be ordinary." She recalled being mesmerized by his lyrics, his mystery, and the way he balanced danger with brilliance. "He scared me, but he also inspired me," Stevie said. "That's what a real artist does. They make you uncomfortable in the best way." During the early years of Fleetwood Mac, Stevie often spoke of Morrison's influence in her songwriting. She even admitted that his work helped her shape her mystical stage persona. "He made me realize that art doesn't have to be pretty," she said. "It just has to be true." For Stevie, Jim Morrison was more than a crush. He was an archetype of everything she found magnetic and terrifying about men in rock music. "He was chaos and beauty at once," she explained. "I think part of me always wanted to understand him, even though I knew I never could." In one emotional interview years later, she confessed that when she wrote Rooms on Fire, she imagined Morrison as the kind of person who could set a room ablaze just by walking into it. "There's something haunting about people like that," she said. "They burn bright and they burn out, but you never forget their light." Even decades after his death, Stevie still speaks of Jim Morrison not as a lost idol, but as an eternal muse, the embodiment of raw expression. "He lived like a poem," she reflected. "And he died like one, too. Too soon, too intense, too real." When asked if she thought she and Morrison would have gotten along, Stevie smiled knowingly. "Probably not," she laughed. "We would have driven each other crazy. But I would have written 10 albums about him." It's easy to see why Jim Morrison holds such a place in Stevie's heart. He represented everything she believed about the duality of love and art, the idea that beauty and destruction often dance together. His music reminded her that passion could be painful and that truth often comes wrapped in madness. "Jim made me brave," she said simply. "He made me believe it was okay to be mysterious, to be misunderstood, to write from the shadows." Even at 77, when Stevie talks about Morrison, her eyes still shine with that same sense of wonder. To her, he remains frozen in time, the wild poet who dared to live like his lyrics. "If I could thank him," she said softly, "I'd tell him he made me fearless, and in many ways, that's the essence of Stevie Nicks herself, a woman who took her inspiration from the flame of another artist and turned it into her own enduring light." When Stevie Nicks reached the 3rd name on her list, her tone softened, not with fantasy or distance this time, but with something far more personal. That man, of course, was Lindsey Buckingham, her bandmate, collaborator, and the person who defined both her greatest triumphs and her deepest heartbreaks. Stevie met Lindsey long before the fame, the awards, or the chaos of Fleetwood Mac. They were just 2 dreamers from California, singing harmonies in small clubs, chasing the kind of destiny only young artists believe in. "We had nothing but music and hope," Stevie once said. And for a while, that was enough. Their chemistry was undeniable from the very start. On stage, they were magnetic, her ethereal energy blending with his precision and intensity. "Lindsey was brilliant," she said. "He played guitar like it was part of his soul. You couldn't ignore him, But as their success grew, so did the tension. Fame magnified every wound. Their romantic relationship began to unravel just as Fleetwood Mac became unstoppable. By the time they recorded Rumors, one of the most iconic albums in music history, their love had already fractured. Yet, ironically, that heartbreak gave birth to some of the greatest songs ever written. Stevie poured her pain into Dreams, her haunting response to Lindsey's biting Go Your Own Way. Decades later, she admitted, we were writing to each other through those songs, fighting, forgiving, falling apart, all at once. When asked recently whether she still had feelings for Lindsey, Stevie took a long pause before answering. He'll always be part of me, she said quietly. No matter what's happened between us, that connection doesn't disappear. Despite their complicated history, Stevie still speaks of Lindsey with admiration, even affection. She described him as the most talented man I've ever known, and admitted that watching him play on stage could still leave her mesmerized. There were nights when I'd look across the stage and think, that's the boy I fell in love with in high school. But their story isn't a fairy tale. It's more like a storm. Over the years, they've drifted apart, reunited, and clashed again. Their creative partnership, though volatile, produced magic that neither could replicate alone. We created something that belonged to both of us, Stevie said. Even when we weren't speaking, the music spoke for us. Behind all the tension, there's an undercurrent of unspoken respect. Stevie has often said that the pain Lindsey caused her also pushed her to become stronger, as a writer, a performer, and a woman. He taught me that I could survive anything, she reflected. Even him. And yet, when she talks about her crush on him, it isn't about the past. It's about what they shared that can never truly be broken. I think part of me will always love him, she confessed. Not the way I used to, but in a way that comes from gratitude. We built something together that changed the world. How could I ever hate that? Even now, when Stevie sings Landslide, her voice carries a tenderness that makes the audience hold their breath. It's as if she's still talking to Lindsey, thanking him, forgiving him, and remembering him all at once. As she summed it up in her interview, some people come into your life to teach you about love. Lindsey came to teach me about everything, love, loss, art, and how to turn pain into beauty. And in that sense, Lindsey Buckingham will always be more than just a former lover or bandmate. To Stevie Nicks, he'll forever be the guitar dreamer, the man who broke her heart, inspired her music, and helped her become the legend she is today. When Stevie Nicks spoke about the fourth man who truly captured her admiration, her voice brightened with unmistakable affection. That man was Tom Petty, her lifelong friend, mentor, and musical soulmate. Unlike the fire and heartbreak that marked her connection with Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie's bond with Tom was built on mutual respect, honesty, and a shared love of pure rock and roll. Tom Petty was the kind of man every woman should meet at least once in her life, Stevie said. He was strong, kind, and cool without ever trying to be. They met in the late 1970s, when Stevie was already a global superstar with Fleetwood Mac, and Tom was leading the Heartbreakers to fame. Stevie had long admired his songwriting, his ability to make simple words sound eternal. He could take 3 chords and make you feel like the world had stopped turning, she said. I wanted to learn from him. I wanted to be around that energy. Their friendship quickly blossomed into one of the most important relationships of her life. Tom became her musical confidant, the one person she could turn to for advice, free of judgment or ego. He treated me like a peer, not a star, she explained. That meant everything to me. Stevie's admiration deepened when they collaborated on Stop Dragging My Heart Around in 1981, one of her most iconic songs. That song changed my life, she recalled. Tom didn't just give me a song, he gave me confidence. She described recording the track as electric, saying, we sang it like 2 people who'd known each other forever. Their connection went beyond the studio. When Stevie struggled with addiction and personal turmoil in the 1980s, Tom was one of the few people who confronted her with honesty. "He didn't sugarcoat things," she said. "He told me, 'You're stronger than this, Stevie. Don't let this world break you.' And he was right." For Stevie, Tom represented the kind of man who reminded her that not every great bond had to be romantic. "People always assume we were something more," she said with a smile. "But what we had was better. We were kindred spirits." She admired him for his humility and his unwavering commitment to his art. "Tom never chased fame. Fame chased him," she said. "He stayed true to himself no matter how big the world got around him." When Tom Petty passed away in 2017, Stevie was devastated. She called it one of the hardest losses of her life. "It felt like losing a brother," she said. "He was my rock. I still miss calling him just to talk about music or life." At her concerts, Stevie began dedicating songs to Tom, often sharing stories about their friendship. During one performance, she said through tears, "Tom Petty taught me how to stand tall in this crazy business. He was my teacher, my hero, and my friend." Even at 77, Stevie still lights up when talking about him. "Tom made me believe that kindness and strength can live in the same person," she said. "He showed me that rock stars don't have to be reckless. They can be real." Their bond was one of deep admiration, not infatuation. But when she was asked if she ever had a crush on him, Stevie laughed softly. "Of course I did," she admitted. "How could I not? He was brilliant. But it wasn't about wanting him. It was about wanting to be more like him." In a world full of fleeting connections and fragile egos, Tom Petty was Stevie Nicks' steady anchor, a reminder that true friendship can be as powerful as any love story. "He'll always be part of my heart," she said, "because some people don't just inspire your music, they inspire your life."